It's Saturday, February 3rd, and welcome to my shop. I've chosen to work outside today for a couple reasons, and I think you'll see this as we move along into this video. But first off, let me introduce you to Old Gold. You know, this is my 300 SDL 4.5, and a couple months ago I put up a request to find a good name for this car, and after seeing all of the recommendations and suggestions for a name for this car, I chose Old Gold. Now, I'm sure some of you say, well, you should have chose that or this. But when I got that recommendation from a viewer, and I don't remember his name, and by the way, if you're watching, thank you, I thought, Old Gold sticks. So that's what this car is now named. And so today I'm working on Old Gold, all right? But a couple things I'm dealing with. Number one, I still have an air leak in the air suspension. I told you after changing those front airbags, I knew it wasn't over, and sure enough, it'll leak down overnight. So I'm after trying to find the air leak, and I have to do this outside because I have to run the car quite a bit to make sure it stays pumped up. But this is the thing I use to find leaks, and this is a good recommendation for those of you who are either dealing with an old air suspension car or an airmatic car. This is the stuff you use to find leaks in gas pipes. It's called Better Bubble. And what's so good about this stuff, it doesn't run off like soapy water. And when it makes bubbles, there's a leak. A lot of times soapy water will make bubbles, but you're not sure if that's just a bubble from the soap or whether there is actually a leak there. Now, I sprayed this up on the main leveling valve. Take a look. Right away, it started bubbling. Now, that's been 5 minutes. Look at how those bubbles have grown and how they've stayed in place. So I can really use this right here to analyze exactly where a leak is occurring. And I can hear the hissing underneath here, just a light hissing. So I'm spraying all the fittings going into the airbags. I'm getting underneath here and spraying this left front leveling valve. And sure enough, there's a leak. I'll try to get the camera in here a little closer so you can see it. It's kind of hard to see in there, but there's a leak under there, and good old Better Bubble did the job. The other thing I'm dealing with is a noise in the front end. And man, this has got to be a perfect example. When you see this, you're going to say, you're right, Kent. Anytime you hear clunking in your suspension, you need to check it out. Don't keep driving the car. And sure enough, I was getting ready today to take this out on a road test. And I wanted to kind of narrow this leak down, find out how bad it was leaking before I hit the road. But, I heard this clunking driving around the farm here. And you have to see this, and I'll show you in a second. But this is really dangerous. And you're going to understand why when you see it up close. And then finally, I've got some new wheels for Old Gold. I have had these chrome alloys around here for quite a few years, just waiting for the right car. Now, I think the chrome alloys look best on dark colored cars, but they also look really good on cars that have a lot of chrome on them. And the W109 has a lot of chrome on it. So I've decided to put these wheels on Old Gold here, and a little later in this video, you'll get to see how it looks. These are the wheels that Old Gold is going to get. So what I'm going to do now is show you what this problem is with the front suspension and the top kingpin attach point. First, I'm going to show you where this leak is coming out of the leveling valve. You can see it coming out of the arm right there, and on the top part, I'll put the light in there so you can see it a little bit better and move this brake hose out of the way. But there you can see the leak. So this is going to take some work. You just don't fix these leveling valves. I'm probably going to have to send these all out to my good friend Martin and get these overhauled, because there's no quick fix when you have a leaking leveling valve like you see here. When I pulled the wheel off, I looked at this, I says, oh my word, look at this. This top bolt, which is the adjusting bolt here on this top wishbone, is backing out, and this is about ready to fall out. Look at that. The nut's completely missing. So can you imagine what would happen if this bolt just backed all the way out while you're driving? This whole wheel assembly would collapse. And imagine how dangerous this would be if you were going 60 or 70 miles an hour down the freeway. So once again, I cannot warn you enough. If you're hearing clunking noises in either your front or rear suspension, do not keep driving the car until you've checked them out. Here's a perfect example. So I'm going to have to see if I've got any parts around here that I can fix this with, at least temporarily. But it doesn't look like any road test for old gold today. Before I put the wheel back on, look at that, I had success. I was able to find the proper size locking nut and tighten this bolt back down. So that's good enough for a road test. You know, obviously, I've got some probably front end alignment issues here. But for now, this is okay. We'll eventually get this back up on the lift. You know, we're going to have to grease all these front end parts. Remember, on these old cars, you got to get a grease gun and lubricate these according to factory recommendations. Well, I think you can see now why I'm working outside. Look at this, I've got a lowrider on my hands. I had to mess around with that bolt on that front suspension long enough that it kind of leaked all the air out. So we've set it down, it's still lightly up on the jack, and I'm gonna start the engine. We're gonna let this thing pump up. But what do you think of those chrome wheels? I know you can't see them real well, but we'll get this thing turned around and you'll get to be the judge whether you like these chrome wheels on old gold here or not. Just listen to how this thing runs. I mean, I haven't even done a lot of stuff that's on my list, and this little old V8 is just purring. So it'll probably have to run here 3 or 4 minutes, and when it gets pumped up, I'll go ahead and turn it around. And I'll give you a shot of the car so you can really see how the chrome wheels look from a distance. Come on, baby, pump up. Well, it's just starting to rain. They say a big storm's moving in here tonight, but I did pull this around so you can see the chrome wheels on old gold here. And I think you'll have to agree with all that extra chrome around the windows on these W109s. I think those chrome wheels look pretty sharp. Now, I only have 2 of them on there because the other 2 are leaking. And if any of you have been around chrome wheels, you know this is the problem with these things. They forever leak around the bead seals. Now, I've got some really good examples of what's going on with these 2 wheels right here. And I'm going to shoot a separate video. I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix these. I'll go through the fixing process, I'll put them on the car, and then I'll report back 6 months later. Because I know you see a lot of videos of people fixing the leaks on their chrome wheels, and they say, well, that lasted about a month. You know, it's not a lot of fun having chrome wheels. You got to pump them up every week or so. So we're going to do that in a separate video, probably not today, but look for that coming sometime this next week. This one here is a real good example of why these chrome wheels leak. It's caused by corrosion, which starts underneath the chrome and then flakes the chrome off, and of course that creates pits and allows leaks to leak out of the bead on the tire. So we're going to go after these things and see if we can indeed fix them permanently. Sometimes on Saturdays I get to test out new tools and experiment with them. So you're going to get to see my first trial run on this new tool I got right here. This is a suction device which uses compressed air. So I'm going to try it on this brake master cylinder. I'm getting ready to do a brake fluid flush on this car, and before I add any new fluid, I want to suck the old fluid out. And if any of you have done this, you know how hard it is to get down in there and get in both chambers of this brake fluid reservoir. So let's see how this does. It's got a couple different fittings on the end here. I'll take the small fitting off, and then I'm going to shove this forward into the forward chamber. And you notice here this has an on-off valve, so I'll turn this off, and then I'm going to plug in the compressed air. All right. Are you ready? Let's open up the valve and see how this does sucking this old brake fluid out of this master cylinder. Look at that. And it doesn't make a lot of noise either. my concern is that this would be too noisy. Okay, we'll shut it off, and then I'm going to put it back in the rear chamber. Turn it off. Okay, look at that. That's pretty slick. Now it has a drain valve on the bottom here, so I can just drain this out without even taking the lid off. So far, I'm pretty impressed with this. We'll be trying this on other things like power steering fluid, and I'm even going to see how it does pulling transmission fluid out of a transmission. In the last episode, I mentioned working on this rust buster tool that I've come up with using high vibration to break rusty bolts and fittings. I had a problem with this one, and man, did that work well, because you're threading a steel brake line into an aluminum housing, and if you try to force that out, you'll go and strip the threads, and that thing went to town. I'm going to direct you to a video I did. It's on my website that'll show you a few more details about this amazing tool. But if you've got rusty fittings, rusty brake hoses, rusty nuts, bolts, this is the best thing I've ever used in my life to break them free. I mentioned earlier that a storm was moving in, and so if you hear this loud droning sound in the background, it's rain. It started to rain really hard here. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned that I had this really cool model I wanted to show you, and some of you might say, well, Kent, you never showed it to us. Well, here it is. I wanted to show it to you today. This is a scale model of a Republic Seabee. Now, I'm sure some of you have seen this airplane. Maybe you've seen pictures of it. This was produced after the war, and it was produced in pretty good numbers. And my father started a seaplane taxi service just after the war. He was a flight instructor in Texas during the war in C-46s and C-47s, and when the war was over, he moved back to the Pacific Northwest, and he decided to continue flying, and he ended up with a Seabee. And I show you a couple pictures that were taken back in the 1950s. I grew up riding in one of these airplanes. I grew up flying one of these airplanes. I remember I couldn't even see over the instrument panel, but my dad would say, come on, kid, you can fly this thing. So there's a lot of nostalgia, and when I saw this model at the Northwest Hobby Model Expo a couple years ago, I just had on it. It's a scratch-built model, and for those of you who know what a scratch-built model is, that's just built from plans. You got a set of plans, and you start cutting balsa wood, and it's a lot of work to do this kind of model. So this thing's a beauty. I'm not even sure if I want to fly this because I would really hate to damage it. But you probably wondered what happened last Saturday because I didn't have a Saturday Garage episode. Well, I wasn't around. I was off at the model show again, selling off some of my airplanes. You know, I realized at this age I better not keep collecting them. I better start going the other way. But, you know, I couldn't help myself. I went down there to sell a bunch of my models. I was not going to buy one, but I walked into this other one, and I'm going to show that one to you now. Take a look. You know what that is? You heard me talk about this a couple weeks ago. This is a Grumman Widgeon. Isn't that a beautiful little model? And once again, I walked by this guy's table, and he had this sitting there and talk about flashback memories. And I told you how that model of the Grumman Goose made me think about the Widgeon, the fact that I got to fly one of these almost 50 years ago. So that's what I was doing last Saturday. I was having a lot of fun at the model show. I hope that someday, when this weather clears up, I mean, it's just been raining and raining and raining, that I can take you out to the lake and show you this thing flying. My son's working on a longer video about the history of the Widgeon and the person that owns it along with his family. And when that's available, I'll also come on and tell you about it and give you links to it. So I'm looking at the clock. Once again, another Saturday rolls by. I sure spent a lot of time messing around with old gold, a lot longer than I thought. I wasn't expecting to run into the problems I did, but I had some fun. You know, old gold is getting closer to getting back out on the road. So I wish all of you a really good week, safe motoring, and hopefully we'll see you next Saturday. And hopefully we'll see you next Saturday.